what's the vibe like in San Fran these days?
San Francisco, luckily we had a little bit of rain. We're in a deep drought, but for some reason we had some rain. It's a little cold, which is why I got this on and my cap to keep my bald head warm.
Yep, I know that feeling.
Yeah, I can see. But otherwise, it's a good day.
Very good, very good. Well, hey, so congratulations on the new album. It was just released on the 8th. So did you do anything exciting on the 8th? Everybody, I talk to people and they're like, no, we just kind of went out to dinner. It's very unrock and roll these days. I don't know what's going on.
Well, that's because, the great anxiety about the instantaneous chart position stuff that happens is just insane these days. There's so many charts to follow.
Right.
In the old days, there was just one. There was Billboard, and you'd have to wait a week before you knew how it was going to chart. But now there are all these streaming charts, and the fans get to post reviews, and many journalists don't actually research. They simply just look at the web and then report on opinions.
Right.
So I think it makes release day kind of nerve-wracking, actually,
right?
Because you're always afraid that your fate will be sealed in a few hours on release day.
Yeah, I think I've been with a couple of musicians who are releasing an album on the day, and they spend most of their time just checking constantly to see how many hits they've gotten. It's like, oh my God.
I know, but yeah, the saving grace for me is that I know I make these albums not to be trendy, but to stand the test of time, and I really do want them to sort of become soundtrack to people's lives, and so I know it's going to take time. My genre is a little subgenre of a little subcategory,
right,
and so it's not the kind of thing you can take in all at once and form an opinion of. So I always cut the audience as much slack as they need.
Fair enough. So according to my research or whatever information I've accumulated, this album was kind of recorded remotely. So
yeah,
how did that work for you? Explain what that means exactly.
Well, what that means is that instead of the traditional method of picking a series of dates and renting a big studio and hiring a bunch of musicians to show up at the same time,
right,
and trying like hell to record really fast because it costs thousands of dollars per hour just to be there. You really do want to get in and out. This was just the opposite. We all recorded digitally at home, and everybody had their own little home studio. Even if they were traveling and they were in a hotel room, they used their laptop or whatever they had. And we do have the means now to record at 96K, super high sample rate,
right,
and send those files around the world like we had to, because Ray, my keyboard player, was all over Australia and Tasmania while we were doing this, so he did have to record in hotel rooms. But the wonder of the internet connected us all in high resolution, and then it got mixed in a traditional way in Burbank at John Bryan's studio by Greg Collar. So in the end, it wound up pretty much like every other album.
Gotcha.
But as it went about being produced, we basically just had to relax and embrace the cards we were dealt, like everybody else on the planet.
Absolutely.
But it had its benefits, I have to say.
Which were what?
Well, for me, I can say personally that being alone allowed me to play better and open up a little bit more, be less shy about screwing up or being, super emotional about, getting into a part or something.
Right.
I also had the time to, record myself 1,000 times doing one thing, never worrying about the clock on the wall. Having a release date also helped because that anxiety was gone as well. So this was really a good thing, and it played into my idea that I should strive to make the best album. So I really did say, okay, I've done, albums where I purposely went techno or classic rock or live in the studio or super produced. This time I just want to do the best songs, the best arrangements, best guitar sounds, best performances. So I just told everybody, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to try. Anyway, I'm
Right.
going to try to attempt to make my best work, and you guys take your time. If you need
Gotcha.
another week to do your little part, we'll just take it. I'm not
Right.
going to rush.
Right. And do you worry about losing any kind of sense of spontaneity with your fellow musicians when you're working like that?
No, because the thing is that all of us are pros, and we know that one of the great things about the digital recording and non-destructive editing is that you can record yourself literally 1,000 times in one day. So
Yeah.
you can record the most spontaneous all the way down to the least spontaneous if you want.
Right.
But the key is that you can sit back and choose. And if you don't like any of it, then you go, well, I'm just going to scrap it, and I'll come back tomorrow, and I won't warm up. I'll just push record, and I'll see what happens.
Right.
Those things really are not affordable in the old traditional sense. It was almost like you go into a studio and you force yourself to be spontaneous, but there's actually no choice. So I always thought that's not really right. Why am I compromising on every recording, but then getting criticized as if that's exactly how I wanted it? But you can't release a record and say, by the way, this is a document of all my compromises,
Right. Yeah, that's not going to go over well.
No, it doesn't. So, it's funny when you have time, when something happens like the pandemic, and all of a sudden you stop, you get off the treadmill and you go, wait a minute, what have I been doing all these decades? Like, is there something that I could change now that I have to? And that was one of the things that I thought, like, I bet this is going to be good for me personally. I didn't know how it would affect the other guys on the team, but I knew that it would alleviate my shyness and my anxiety about making albums and handling the budget and everything. Because when you're the solo artist, it really does, it comes out of your wallet.
Yep.
And you get the criticism if things don't go well,
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. There's plenty of that going around.
So this time it was actually really good. I mean, on release day, you still go like, I don't know, people are going to like it. They're allowed to like it, and they're allowed not to like it. You can't make people like it. So that's always there. But at least, you didn't compromise. You did your best, and you're looking forward to doing it live.
Gotcha. So the album is called The Elephants of Mars, and it's comprised of about 14 tracks, instrumental, of course. For you, is there something that ties those songs together? Because obviously with songs with lyrics, you look for the lyrical stuff that kind of does that, but this is different. So tell me how that works for you.
There wasn't an album theme other than those goals that I mentioned before. There was a lot of songs to choose from, and I decided early on I wasn't going to try to create a theme, and the album wasn't really titled, at least until 2/3 of the way through, maybe even later. So I was really running on not a theme, but like I said, the goals of better songs, like the best songs, the best arrangements, the best guitar sounds, the best performances. I thought this is the way to go. And then once you're done, pick the songs that work together.
Right.
And what that was going to be. I didn't know what my mood would be, what criteria I would use to evaluate whether songs went together. But as we got to those last few weeks, it became so apparent to me that The Elephants of Mars was going to be the title track, and that these 14 enhanced each other because they were so different. And that was going to be a hallmark. That was like the surprise of what I'd been working on, was that the diversity of the material was actually going to shine a really favorable light on the whole album, as a whole statement. So I didn't plan on it, but it really helped in the final days, when I said, this is the album title and this is the story behind the song, and getting that to my art director and him coming up with this,
yeah, that's cool.
It all added to it, and and we kept a good sense of humor about it, which I thought was really good.
Right. Speaking of the individual songs, some of them have rather evocative titles. There's Doors of Perception, which if anybody knows anything about the Doors, they know where that came from. There's East 104th Street, New York City, 1973, very specific. 22 Memory Lane. So what goes into making these titles, and what do you hope the listeners get from that?
Well, because they're instrumentals, the fans will, they know that it's their prerogative. They will freely associate,
right,
and put their meaning to it. But I let them know where it came from. So East 104th Street, that's where my father was born and raised, and that's where, as a little kid, I thought New York City in Spanish Harlem was the craziest, most wonderful place ever. But then in 1970, when I became a teenager and started playing guitar, I had scarier fun. And realized what a crazy place New York City really was, but I had all those adventures that you have when you're coming of age.
Right.
And I had to pick a year that would encapsulate me looking forward and looking back. And since I wound up moving to San Francisco by 78, I was really going to stay out here. So
right.
And 73 seemed like that midpoint for me,
right,
between a little kid and being a teenager coming of age. And I guess that was the age where I really started to understand more like an adult that, the history of my grandparents coming from Italy, settling
right.
in New York City, my father and his two brothers growing up in a very rough situation, and their life and achieving the American dream, and how I was the recipient of it, and then what happened to New York City and what happened to the American dream as the city went bankrupt.
Right. Yes, because I'm of similar vintage to you, and I was in New York City from time to time back then, so I know what you're talking about. So music-wise, there's a lot going on at the same time. There was the whole punk thing that was kind of rising up, and and the city has a great history of like doo-wop and street corner singing and all that. Does that enter into anything that you do? Do you think?
Yes, I mean, there's a strong influence of Miles Davis on the corner.
Right.
That kind of vibe to the song. There was rock. I mean, we went to see Led Zeppelin at Madison Square Garden, and Alan Holdsworth and Tony Williams, and I saw John McLaughlin a few times, even in Central Park.
Right.
And I was in the late 70s, mid to late 70s. I was in a disco band that wound up doing a show with Blondie and the Bonsai Babies. We were both kind of auditioning to get like a recurring slot at this club on 82nd Street or something.
Right.
And I think it was called Brandy's 2 or something like that. I mean, talk about worlds colliding.
I'll bet.
I didn't even, I was just in this disco band because I needed to make a living.
Yeah.
And they were also confused. Like I remember having a conversation with her and Chris Stein, and we're just talking like, how can we make money to pay rent?
Yeah.
And they decided to do that, and we decided to do this, and we were like, good luck,
Yeah.
Hopefully one of us gets this gig, because there was another band that night. I don't know who got the gig eventually.
Right.
We did.
Very good. While we're going through the past, I mean, I moved to New Zealand in '94, which was before the Mick Jagger solo tour thing that everybody talks about, and the secret gig at the Glue Pot and all that. I mean, that's become legendary. It's like one of the first things I heard about when I moved here. Do you remember much of that at all?
Oh yes. Wow. What a great time. Talk about, a reverse of fortune. I mean, going into 88, my album Surfing with the Alien had just been released a few months earlier, right at the end of October. Stock market crashed, I think that very day, maybe. And I was thinking like, okay, they're going to tear up the contract, run me out of town, and I'll go back to, teaching guitar at the little store. And all of a sudden, I get this call that the album is charting and I better put a band together. And so I'm like, okay, I remember telling the president of Relativity Records that he had to understand that I had never performed as the leader of an instrumental rock guitar band. I said, I have no idea what to do. Like, do you jump around? You stand still? Is it serious?
Yeah.
What do you do? So I did that for about 2 weeks in the beginning of January of '88. And then I got a call, from outer space. Basically, one of my former managers is laughing on the phone and he says, you're not going to believe this, but Mick Jagger needs a guitar player and your name came up. And we both laughed because I was not the right guy for the gig,
Right.
But we both agreed that I had to do it just so that I have the experience. But I did get the gig, and all of a sudden, my tour, which was not going very well, got thankfully canceled. And suddenly everywhere I went, there was a red carpet, and I was hanging out with Mick and playing with one of the greatest bunch of musicians ever.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to Japan, had a fantastic time touring Japan, and then regrouped later that year and toured Australia, played a show in New Zealand, played a show in Indonesia. Just fabulous year, hanging with Mick. What a great guy. He really helped my career immensely. I mean, really hands-on, like he knew what was happening to me and with Surfing with the Alien. And he would come to me and say, whatever you need, now's the time to take advantage of it. So my team is at your disposal to help you maximize this, and gave me a spot in the middle of the show. It was really great, and he was such a fun guy to hang with,
Yeah, that's good to know. Now, getting back to the new album, I see there's a video of the title track of Elephants of Mars. How involved, it's insane, visually. How much are you involved in the making of these things?
Well, that video, last number of videos I've done have all been from the brain of my son, Zizi.
Really?
And I don't really, I don't start out with anything with him. I send him the track and I say, are you available? Is it okay? Do you want to work with your old man again?
Right.
So, because I am just his dad, I'm not Joe Satriani. I'm just dad. So he listens to it and he calls me up and he goes, yeah, I got this idea. I don't know if you're going to, agree with it, but this is what I think would be fun. And I learned very early on, because we did a documentary called Beyond the Supernova that came out in 2018. That now, actually, just about 2 weeks ago, it became available on Amazon Prime and iTunes. And that was true. All of it was really his insight into what was happening as he started to document behind the scenes for a live DVD that never happened. And ever since then, I realized I should just do whatever he says.
Right.
He's got a really crystallized vision in his mind, and it always works out. It's always something I never would have thought of. And so in this particular case, he did call up and he said, okay, this is my concept. He said, it's going to be totally bizarre. And, but it's a video game. And so first of all, I was happy that it wasn't going to be some sort of, glamorized video or some sort of technical video, which I find really boring when artists do that. But he managed to come up with a story that was an additional story, another way of looking at a song that had nothing to do with the reason why I wrote the song. And so right away, I liked it. And I liked the irreverent attitude. And of course, the fact that he achieved it is mind blowing, because you can watch that thing 100 times every time you see 20 new things.
Very cool. Very cool. So the album's been out for like a week now, and you've always got like several irons in the fire. There's the G3, there's Chickenfoot, there's all that. You got a tour of the States and Europe coming up. What do you think? Are you thinking about what you're going to do next musically?
Practice. As you can see, this little room here,
Yep.
is set up for me to just hide from the world and just go over everything that I think I'm going to play on tour. I'm the kind of guy that likes to practice maybe 6 to 8 weeks, run through the show twice a day, make sure all the instruments I'm going to bring are the best ones for me to achieve the songs that are going to be on the set list. I like to practice and be so prepared that I never think about anything. Once I hit the stage,
right,
I know I just turn into somebody else. That's what the Beyond the Supernova documentary was all about. But it's a way that I've always operated. And so I know that, you know, my marching orders are basically start practicing now. But I do have 2 other art exhibitions to go to in the beginning of June, and we're waiting on 10 more guitars to arrive for me to paint. So I've got some painting to do ahead of me for that. So yeah, I basically walk between the music room and the art room back and forth, try to keep the paint off the guitars.
There you go. Yeah, right. And yeah, I mean, you've been a fairly regular visitor to New Zealand over the years. I think the last time you were here was at the power station, which is right around the corner here a couple of years ago. So hopefully we'll get to see you there sometime. I was wondering, did you watch the Grammys? Do you pay attention to that stuff?
I caught maybe 2/3 of it. I think
right.
This time I was doing something else.
Right.
But I always enjoy it. I tell you, you know, besides all the controversy, you know, which is really, I don't really care. The awards really don't mean anything.
Right.
But what always amazes me, and this is just on a personal level, is the competency of the musicianship that I see.
Yeah.
And I have to let people know that, you know, it is the most nerve-wracking thing. And it is the most chaotic thing backstage when they put on a show like this.
Right.
And I've attended these things before and played at a pre-show, and it is insane that anything goes right. You know what I mean?
Easily outclassed the Oscars this year, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so I see a performance and I go, my God, those musicians played everything right.
Right.
They, you know, and they only had one chance to do it, and so. And the funny thing is that sometimes I don't watch because I actually get nervous, like, you know, for them, you know.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to enjoy it because I feel that sort of anxiety, like, damn, it's like millions of people are watching this. And if they do it right, no one will talk about it. And if they screw up, everybody will talk about
it. That's what they do. Yes, indeed. Well, it was nice to see somebody like John Baptiste get, you know, some acknowledgement for what he does. I mean, I know he's on TV a lot, which helps.
His performance was great. Yeah. Wow. Natural person to put in front of a camera, right?
Yeah. Very good. Very good. All righty. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you very much for spending time talking to me. And hopefully we'll see you back down these parts again sometime.
That would be great. That would be really great.
All righty. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.